Africa is a diverse continent, but the success rate of its various countries is mixed, to say the least. But there is one country that stands apart, one that has a high GDP, a comfortable population, and a stable democracy and economy. But I seriously doubt you've ever heard of it. This is Mauritius, a tiny island country that bucks the trend of Africa as a whole. So why is Mauritius so successful, and why have you probably never heard of it? Mark Twain once wrote, "You gather the idea that Mauritius was made first, and then heaven, and that heaven was copied after Mauritius." It's a bold claim, but for anyone who has seen its shores, it feels less like hyperbole and more like a statement of fact. Located over 1,000 miles off the southeastern coast of Africa is Mauritius, a tiny dot in the vast Indian Ocean, a place often overlooked on world maps. And to truly understand its story, we must first understand the island itself, a dramatic stage of volcanic fury and serene beauty upon which an incredible country would emerge. Seen from above, Mauritius is a spectacle, a central plateau of jagged, emerald green mountains that gives way to plains that slope gently towards a coastline of brilliant white sand. But unlike most landmasses on Earth, Mauritius wasn't born of slow, grinding geology. It was forged by violent fire. You see, Mauritius is a volcanic island, punched up from the seabed millions of years ago by dramatic eruptions. These origins are etched into its very skyline. The dramatic peaks of Le Morne Brabant, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the curiously shaped Trois Memales Mountains are not ancient, eroded nubs. They're the dramatic, fractured remnants of a massive shield volcano. The entire island is a barrier of coral reef, a delicate living fortress that guards the country's coastline. This reef is the island's great protector. It absorbs the raw power of the Indian Ocean, transforming crashing waves into gentle, lapping waters. And it's this exact process that created the iconic Mauritian lagoons. Vast stretches of calm, impossibly turquoise water, so clear you can see the sandy floor from dozens of feet above. It's really a world of two oceans, the wild, deep blue sea beyond the reef and the serene, shallow paradise within it. This natural wall didn't just create postcard-perfect beaches. It would fundamentally shape how life, both marine and human, could thrive here. But the most breathtaking feature of the Mauritian coast isn't the reef itself, but a powerful illusion it helps create. Off the southwestern tip of the island, below the towering peak of Le Morne, lies one of the planet's most stunning natural phenomena, an underwater waterfall. From the air, it appears as though a massive river is plunging into a deep underwater abyss. The sight is both baffling and mesmerizing. You can see the water cascading into the depths, a torrent of blue and white pouring into the darkness. But here's where it gets a little weird. The waterfall isn't real. It's a spectacular optical illusion, a trick of geography and perception. The water is actually sand and silt deposits being pulled by ocean currents off the high coastal shelf and down into the much deeper ocean beyond. It's a river of sand, creating a three-dimensional painting that just appears like what we interpret as a waterfall. For millions of years, this isolated landscape evolved in isolation. Its distance from the continent meant that only the hardiest plants and animals could arrive, leading to the evolution of unique species, most famously, the dodo bird. It was a world untouched by humanity, a pristine volcanic jewelry box, fertile and vibrant, but utterly alone. It had no indigenous population, no ancient ruins, no human footprint whatsoever. The stage was set, a perfect, empty paradise waiting in the middle of the ocean. That was all about to change. The arrival of the first ships would trigger a chain of events that would strip the island of its native forests, drive its unique creatures to extinction, and begin a new story, one of colonization, sugar, and the forging of a new people. For millions of years, Mauritius was devoid of human life. While civilizations rose and fell across the globe, Mauritius was empty. It was a world without people, a biological experiment running in perfect isolation. But such a paradise, fertile and strategically placed, wouldn't remain hidden forever. The story of how this island was populated is not one of ancient migrations, but a modern, often brutal, tale of commerce, colonization, and the forced and voluntary movement of people from 3 different continents. The result was a country with no native population, a place where everyone, in a sense, is an immigrant. But let's clear one thing up. Mauritius wasn't entirely unknown to humans. In fact, for centuries, Arab and Malay sailors knew of the island. It was a landmark on their trade routes, but they never settled it. The Portuguese also charted it in the early 1500s and named it Island of the Swan, likely after the dodo, but they too moved on. The first real attempt to tame this island came in 1598 from the Dutch. They renamed it Mauritius in honor of their prince, Maurice van Nassau, and set up a small colony. It was also the Dutch who introduced sugarcane, the very crop that would one day define the island's destiny. But their tenure on the island was a disaster. They were plagued by cyclones, droughts, and rat infestations. And within a few decades, they had driven the dodo to extinction. By 1710, the Dutch abandoned the island completely, leaving behind little more than a name and fields of sugar.